The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. We've been talking for some time now, especially in the context of the 2020 Democratic primary, of the reality that very often the Democratic candidates or individual Democrats within the Democratic Party are to the left of what is the official Democratic Party position. And this applies to a number of different issues. Notably, in talking about the people who have declared candidacies for 2020 Democratic nominee, I've mentioned that even though you have varying degrees of support for Medicare for all or a similar universal health care plan, nationalized health care plan within the Democratic Party candidates, the Democratic Party platform is to the right of many of those candidates. The Democratic Party platform officially on health care is to improve the Affordable Care Act with a public option and to create a optional Medicare buy-in starting at age 55. That's very different than Medicare for all. Likewise, a popular, increasingly popular decision that some candidates have made is not to accept corporate PAC money. And the DNC is now involved in an internal fight about whether they want to completely forego corporate PAC money at the committee level, at the DNC level. And this is one of those, within the left, there are drastically different views about this issue. There are those on the left who take what I would consider a more generally principled approach. And I don't mean principled as necessarily positive. I mean, it's the principle rather than the practice. And they say, we shouldn't take corporate PAC money. It's the wrong thing. We're against corporate PACs. We should just stop accepting money at every level and at the DNC level. Now, there are Democrats like Bakari Sellers, who was on a panel with me at Politicon in Los Angeles a few months ago, who use the phrase unilateral disarmament. They are against unilateral disarmament, meaning if corporate PAC money is a tool that helps you win, which it is in the sense that we know whoever has more money tends to win, why would you unilaterally disarm, give away a weapon that you have in order to win races when the other side shows no interest in doing it? And that is also a reasonable argument, which a lot of people in the room disagreed with, by the way, when Bakari Sellers said that. And now the DNC is involved in this debate. There's a group of committee members who says the DNC, in order to show that it's serious about banning corporate PAC money, they have to stop accepting it. How can you be credible in saying you want to ban it if you keep accepting it? I don't think that that's literally true, Pat. I mean, I do think that there's no question that as a general rule, if a status quo circumstance gets you into power, you're probably not as eager to change that because it's what got you into power. But I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that you can't possibly be, whoa, I hit my mic there, sorry. You can't possibly be against corporate PAC money if you accept it. I would rather them not accept it, but I don't think it's a rule that says you are definitely not credible simply because you're continuing to accept it. You probably recognize that more money makes it more likely that you will win elections.
Yeah, there's a lot here. So on the unilateral disarmament point, Republicans are always going to be able to raise more money. There's just more corrupting influences on that side, at least when we talk about like the corporate PAC level, right? So I think it's a better strategy for Democrats not to take the corporate PAC money and to appeal to the voters as more genuine. And I think they'll be able to do that because most Americans are against our current campaign finance structure. I think you do a much better job, maybe raise less money, but you at least come off as genuine. So that's kind of number one. Number two.
So let me play
Sure.
devil's advocate on that, though. Let me play devil's advocate because getting money out of politics polls really well across party lines. Yeah, it polls slightly better with Democrats than with Republicans. But getting money out of politics does really well with a lot of independent voters and Republican voters as well. The difference is that the Republican voters don't have any interest in Republicans no longer accepting corporate PAC money if Democrats are going to continue. They may agree that it should end, but they are not going to suggest this kind of unilateral disarmament. Can we point to this as another one of those reasons why Democrats are at a disadvantage? Because even Democratic voters would like to see the unilateral disarmament, whereas Republican voters are like, yeah, I'm against it, but for as long as it's legal, we're going to keep taking the money.
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely get the point that you're making. I just feel like the best path forward to them for them Democrats is the small dollar donation approach that Bernie Sanders has been taking, the $27 at a time that, in his first 24 hours after announcing got him like $6 million.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I think that the other issue here is that there are some who are saying, yes, that's an important, some on the Democratic Party, some who are even in these committees that are going to make these decisions, who are saying, okay, yeah, let's get rid of corporate PAC money, but first let's just get rid of Trump. Let's do that first. And I actually think that that's not a very good argument. I don't think that, it's a very coy way to just not have to actually deal with it or take a position right now. Because if you say, I would love to get rid of corporate PAC money, but I'm not going to really think about that until we get rid of Donald Trump, I find it to sort of be a cop-out.
I think for now, it's acceptable that the Democratic Party doesn't put on their platform that a candidate can't take corporate PAC money. It may take a few years until we get there, but let's duke it out. Let's see what happens. We'll have candidates who are more on the progressive side of the spectrum, like Bernie and Warren, who refuse to take corporate PAC money. And then people on the establishment side, I don't know specifically if they'll do this or not, but like Amy Klobuchar or Joe Biden, maybe they'll take corporate PAC money, and we'll see who wins. And I have a strong feeling that it's going to be the progressive who wins out, and maybe even raises more.
Well, now I think there are low 50s number of Democrats in the House who do not accept corporate PAC money, and that's a higher number than has ever been there. So we'll see what the DNC ultimately decides, and of course we'll think about what impact it will actually have in the House and maybe the Senate in the 2020 election. Archaeologists in the UK say that they have traced dozens of Stonehenge's massive rocks to two particular quarries in West Wales, which is about 180 miles from where Stonehenge sits today. We believe that the stones were dragged the 180 miles on wooden sleds, according to the best science on this issue at this point in time, by teams of strong men. Now, when they say strong men, Pat, do they mean men who happen to be strong, or are they talking about like a weightlifter, like a strong man? I don't know that that existed back at that time.
I don't know. I don't think like power lifters, but if you lived in the Stone Age, I'd have to imagine you have to be able to lift quite a bit just to survive. I think that's what they're talking about.
I think the physical requirements at that period of time were more arduous, I would say, than living in 2019 United Kingdom or the United States for sure. I find it super interesting to learn about how things like Stonehenge were built, how the pyramids were built, and the amount of time and just human strength and willpower also. Of course, when you're a slave and you're forced into doing it, that'll create something that maybe willpower is not exactly the right word for. Maybe it's more fear for your life if you don't figure out how to drag some big stones or whatever. But it is just amazing to read about, even without modern technology and power tools and electricity, what humans were able to achieve in these ways hundreds of years ago or even longer.
Especially when there's an element of mystery here. Like Stonehenge was built in 3000 BC, right? 5,000 years ago. We'll probably never know why they decided to build it. And yeah, I mean, they had to drag these giant stones 180 miles. And for what purpose? Some say it was to construct a calendar. Some say it was some sort of religious monument. Some say it was like a national monument. I don't know if we'll ever find out what the reason is. And I have visited, by the way. I would recommend it to you if you are staying in London for maybe a few days. It's a nice little day trip down there.
Yeah, last time I was in London, or the only time I've been in London, I didn't make it out, but it was because I had never been to London and there was so much to see there, and my cousin was visiting, and it was a whole thing. But, there is a sort of mini Stonehenge replica just outside or on the edge of the University of Massachusetts Amherst campus. And I've been to that many times, so maybe I can skip the real Stonehenge. What do you think?
Well, did they have to drag those stones 180 miles from some point way off in the distance, and they had to do it like manually? Was it constructed in the same way?
No,
was everything
I assume
replicated?
That they brought them with some kind of gasoline or diesel powered truck.
I feel like it's just not the same.
No, it's definitely not the same. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously yesterday that the Constitution's ban on excessive fines applies to state and local governments. Why do we care? We care because it is going to limit asset forfeiture, okay? The decision was written by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. By the way, this was her second day back at the court after her absence from the Supreme Court for the first time in like her 25 years on the bench because she had surgery for lung cancer late in 2018. Her second day back, she issues this decree. Decree is actually the wrong word. This opinion for the Supreme Court. And the opinion specifically was related to the case of Tyson Timms, who had a Land Rover worth $42,000 seized by the state of Indiana when he was arrested selling a small amount of heroin to undercover cops for $400. And this civil asset forfeiture has become a really big deal. And there are people, interestingly, on both the left and right who oppose these excessive seizures of property and money. And in this case, the question is, okay, you have $400 of heroin and you sell it. Yes, it's a crime, but does that allow the state or local government to seize $42,000 of property, particularly property that beyond, I guess, being your transportation to the buy, isn't really material to the commission of the crime? And the people who oppose this type of civil asset forfeiture on the left tend to oppose it, number one, because it perpetuates a prison pipeline of people who, when you take their assets, they are more likely to end up having to commit crimes in order to sort of survive and meet their obligations, which makes it more likely they will end up back in prison. Also, very often, this disproportionately is impacting poor people and non-white people. So the left is often opposed to civil asset forfeitures of this kind for that reason. On the right, you often see the small government conservatives say these are overreaches in the same way that we're against the government taking tax money from our income. We are against the government taking assets from us. So it seems that, number one, this is a decision that, at least to some degree, Pat, should please some people on the left and some people on the right. But this may really be an issue that we can actually make significant progress on because there is at least a coalition of left-wingers and right-wingers that are against it. Yeah,
one other major reason why people should be against civil asset forfeiture is because it completely shifts the burden of proof. So like this guy got his $40,000 car taken away from him. Now it's incumbent on him to prove that his car was not used in the carrying out of a crime, and that's often very hard to do. May result in him never getting his things back, right? Also, this kind of has to do with the constitutional originalist point because the Constitution bans excessive fines. Well, that's kind of open for interpretation, right? Like the Indiana Supreme Court, where this was initially litigated, they said that this was not an excessive fine, and then the Supreme Court of the United States says that it was. If you're taking like a purely constitutional originalist view at that, I mean, anything over, $100 would be excessive because of the value of money at the time when the Constitution was written. So these things change with our updating standards of decency, where we are as a country at the time. And I think that's why we can't look at constitutional originalists with any seriousness.
Yeah, and by the way, this isn't the only reason why we can't look at constitutional originalists with any seriousness. At this point, we've done 2 or 3 important, I would call them, interviews on this topic with some of the most cited legal scholars on this issue. And they say it goes well beyond civil asset forfeiture, the list of reasons why we can't be falling into this bogus constitutional originalism nonsense. And that certainly is my point of view. I want to hear from you about it, though. Do you think that there is any defense of taking a $42,000 Land Rover that wasn't stolen, right? I mean, that's a key thing. The Land Rover wasn't illegally owned or leased or whatever the case was. It was just the vehicle that the individual drove in to the commission of the crime. Also, by the way, I don't even know that I have to mention this. If the vehicle was towed by police because the individual was arrested, and then once bailed out or whatever, it's just a matter of going and paying the impound fee and you get your vehicle back. Okay, that's not what we're talking about when we talk about civil asset forfeiture. That's when authorities take the vehicle and it becomes theirs. And those are two very, very different things. With all that being said, if you think it's defensible to take the $42,000 Land Rover, let me know. I want to hear why.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.